This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, don't forget we have a YouTube channel. Now, if you listen to us on your favorite podcast platform like Apple or Spotify, that's great. You can hear our voices, but on YouTube, you can see us. Now, my usual joke, I have a face made for radio because I was a radio guy, but it is the truth. But my guests do not. And so we want to encourage you to jump on YouTube and watch as well as listen to episodes of the PR Podcast. Much more interesting to watch them, I would think. You can watch them on your phone, you can watch them on your iPad, you can watch them on your laptop or your desktop, wherever you are. Just don't watch them while you're driving. But tune in to us on YouTube. Just search it up at, as the kids say, search up at the PR Podcast on YouTube. You'll find our channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and you can watch all of our episodes. Now on with our show for today. What a terrific guest we have. Eileen Wixted is a nationally recognized strategic communications and crisis management veteran with core competencies in the healthcare, energy, insurance, and financial services sectors. Eileen's the president of Wixted Company, which has been named in the Agency Elite Top 120 by PR News for 4 consecutive years. That's something. Prior to Wixted Company, Eileen spent more than a decade as a broadcast journalist and received an Emmy Award for her work. She's a graduate of Michigan State University and native of Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn in the house. Eileen, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Jody, thank you so much. It is really wonderful to be with you and with all your listeners. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. All right, let's do it now. I'm an old radio guy. You were in TV. Where'd you work? Where was the job?
So, as a matter of fact, I worked in television news, but I began actually in radio in college, where I worked at WJIM and WITL, the best in the country, Whittle FM. I worked in news there, and that was in East Lansing because I went to Michigan State. And then I moved around in television news. I worked in Flint. That was when the water was good. Flint, Saginaw, Bay City, Topeka, Des Moines. And then I did health reports that were syndicated to the top 85 markets. And I did those for 14 years.
That is a skill set that I think the best PR people have. They worked on that side of the assignment desk and they're now doing the job from this side of the assignment desk. How does that experience help you with what you do with your clients?
Well, I think naturally when you go into news or into media, and I imagine the same is true for you, that you have a certain curiosity. You tend to be interested in people. You have to ask good questions. You have to ask relevant questions. You also have to be a good listener, and you have to be able to take complex situations or issues or initiatives and distill them relatively quickly. And in addition to that, through it all, you have to be able to continue to connect with the person that you're interviewing, right? Otherwise, they're going to get up and they're going to walk off, or they're not going to be willing to sit down again. And I think that those are really important skills, which allow us then when someone is saying to us, "Hey, listen, we have to close a plant," or "We had a wrong site surgery and we're getting sued," or "Oh, by the way, we gave the wrong baby to the wrong family," or "We have corrosion in the reactor head," or something like that. And we're getting questions, and what do we need to do? I think the training in media, specifically news, and having to turn stories fast, right, and interview a lot of different people and take complex things and distill them down, I think it's really, really helped in being able to have the same skills to help our clients. I also think, though, that being empathetic, you learn to be empathetic when you're interviewing a family member whose son was just shot and killed, right? And he may have been in the wrong place. He may have had a gun in his hand or something like that. And so I had to learn how to be empathetic, Not a lot of empathy in Brooklyn, but you've got to bring those empathy chops with you. Otherwise, the person's not going to talk to you. But more than that, You want to make people feel comfortable so they will open up. And I think that's really an important skill when you've got clients who come in, they feel under attack, they're on the defense right from the get-go, and you have to be able to get them to trust you. And so I think that that all has worked together.
Boy, you hit so many important concepts there in there, whether it's empathy or trust or just getting bad news out and getting in front of it, right? Hitting it head on. And you dropped a couple of really seemingly specific examples there. So I'm thinking maybe you've done a few of those. Tell us about getting out in front of bad news and why it's so important for clients.
So in today's current environment, first of all, the definition of crisis or reputation damaging situations has really broadened, right? Back in the day, if something had to go boom in the night or somebody had to be injured, maimed, killed, I mean, it had to be something significant, and really and tragic. Today, it's bad behavior. It's not living your core values. It's risky behavior, just a whole variety of different things in addition to things that go boom in the night. But I think the reason why you want to share your bad news first is what I call the first move advantage. And traditionally, you want to share and own your bad news first because there is a first move advantage. And the first move advantage allows you A, to own it and acknowledge it, B, to frame it out, what happened, and C, to talk about what you've done to ensure this doesn't happen again. But sometimes people think getting out in front of it means, hey, I'm going to run to the media. And sometimes with our clients, I'm like, here's the deal. We're going to hybrid this. We're going to get out in front of it with our employees and maybe our customers, okay, or patients or something like that. I'm thinking with our healthcare clients, okay. We're going to get in front of it there, but we're not going to share it publicly with the media. But when the media does find out, we will be able to hold up our letter and say, yes, as a matter of fact, we communicated proactively. Here it is. And then we give them that letter, which is written for the patient, right? The patient in mind. And in today's media, they'll take the whole letter, they'll put a link to it, and those sorts of things. So when we think about getting out in front of it, it's not necessarily running to your local network affiliate or your local newspaper. It's about thinking about all the people that you care about and all the stakeholders that are important to you in your business, and then sequencing them in a way that's important and a way that's relevant. Because at the end of the day, it's your ability to stay in business that's going to be important. The media can make you look bad, right? I mean, they can make you look bad. But if you don't alert your regulators, they can shut you down, right? Or your employees, they can walk on you. So we have to think about it really from a more holistic viewpoint.
It's a great point. And the media are going to be gone once the story is over. But your employees, your customers, your board, your your stockholders, your shareholders, those people are all going to be sticking around. Hopefully, if you've done a good job, they're all going to be sticking around. And if you boot the execution of the messaging to those key groups, even if you get glowing media stories, I would think you've lost the battle. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I will tell you that about, I would say 10 years ago, I noticed a seismic shift in in stakeholders that we care about. Like there was a reordering of stakeholders. So like 10 years ago, everybody was afraid like the media. Wow, the media is going to look bad. It's going to be like a 60 minutes expose and oh my goodness, and we want to look good in the media. About maybe 10, 12 years ago, people started and it was after the financial crisis is really when it happened. And I saw it first in healthcare because we were having an issue of retaining and recruiting employees. And there was this what I call seismic shift that occurred probably within about 3 or 4 years, where companies and executives and others were really beginning to say to themselves, wait a second, if the outside is good, that's fine. But if the inside is rotten, I'm going to implode. And so we began focusing our attention really on the internal stakeholder management, making certain that your employees are engaged from a communication standpoint. And so that way they know before any news release is going to go out, they will be told first. Any bad news, they're going to be on a Teams or Zoom call, or they're going to be an all hand meeting. That we care enough about them, they're important enough to us that we're going to share information with them first. That helps build trust. It also helps build some loyalty, because you're right. You want them to stay with you, and if you think of if you treat them as an afterthought, they're not going to stay with you.
That's part of that empathetic approach that you were talking about there, sort of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and crafting a message that is not necessarily what they want to hear, but it's maybe the way they want to hear it, or couching it in a way that they will understand it. And even if they don't agree with it, sort of be able to digest it, right?
Right. And also I think there's empathy and there's candor. So we worked with a lot of clients, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners did, during COVID. And it was interesting because at that point in time, as people were working remotely, and we had a crew of 8 that we kept in the office, and it was the same 8 of us, and everybody else worked remotely. What we found were our clients were like, "What else should we do? What have we forgotten about?" And what I said to them is, "You don't have all the answers. So let's not pretend with your internal stakeholders that you do. Let's instead use this as an opportunity to what I call build close." So in these videos that we would do, and there was a lot of videos that people would do, it's like, you'd record on Zoom or whatever, and it would be a CEO video or a senior vice president, whatever it ended up being. It would be, "Hey friends, we hope that you're safe. Um, you know, we've none of us have ever lived through this pandemic. Here's the vision, here's the operating plan forward, but quite candidly, what I need you all to do is to do your very best," right? You may have kids at home, you may do everything, but I need you to lean in and get closer to your clients or whatever it may end up being. And if you have any other ideas, and then solicit ideas. If you have any other ideas as you are seeing, thinking, please share them with us, because we are in this together. We will move through and work together, and we will be united as we continue to work together through this pandemic. And my clients who did that, A, tended to have much better retention at the end of COVID. They had a greater degree of loyalty. And when we, there was, employee engagement, people felt that they knew their leaders more and they trusted them more in a lot of ways, because they saw them on, sometimes it was every day or every other day, and then it was once a week. I mean, sort of the frequency of communication. And then the other thing too, especially when people were candid, they were like, I appreciated that he said, "Hey, listen, I don't have all the answers here. I don't have the pandemic playbook. We're going to build it together, and I want you to be part of it."
Great points there. Let's pivot back to your crisis experience with your clients. I think you've described sort of a three-step framework in responding to PR disasters. And as you outlined, right, the definition of disaster has probably changed radically from what you and I thought it was, or knew it was 30 or 40 years ago. We used to joke in the newsroom, unless a plane crashes. We don't make that joke anymore. Right? But now today's people think of a crisis as something on TikTok, right? Or something attack on your brand, attack on your reputation. But you've got this three-step framework: assess, action plan, and auditing. Did I get those right? Walk us through
Yes.
them.
Yeah, so it's like it's the AAA, and when we developed this, it was because in a crisis by its very nature puts you on the defense. And if you're working internally for a company, especially in communications and PR, you're like, "Oh my gosh, everybody wants to know, what should I do?" And it's in that chaos, and people feel frantic, right? That I wanted to put a model and a framework together to bring some calm and order so good decisions could be made. So the first one is, and I built this framework because the phone rings a lot. And today just had two calls. We had two what we call incoming calls, and different types of crises, right? And they're not all crises. Some are an incident, one is a crisis. But as we begin thinking about it, and I started thinking through, what do we do? And so the very first thing that we do is we have to assess, what are we dealing with? And I always begin with, first and foremost, thank you for the phone call. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Tell me what you know. And tell me what you know, what's happening, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. What I'm trying to understand, is it big or is it little, right? If you have corrosion in your reactor head or your nuclear power plant, where is it? Is it big, or is it about as big as a baby aspirin? Right? I have to understand context, right? I have to understand scope. So we go through assess, and in that assessment, we go through the risk, right? That assessment. And sometimes the risk is, are you to blame, or is there a perception that you are to blame, right? Because in the first phase of a crisis, it doesn't matter if you're to blame or there's a perception you are to blame. You're going to have to communicate in that same way. So as you think through that, so we go through this assessment. Based upon the assessment, then we make a decision. Do we take any action? And what I'm talking about when I talk about action, I talk about communication action. Hopefully we've got a good operational plan or business continuity plan, but I'm really talking about a communication action. Okay. And sometimes we are going to put out a statement internally first. Sometimes we are going to only put out an internal statement and nothing else. Sometimes we're going to do an all hands meeting and nothing else. Sometimes what we're going to do is we're going to do everything from A to Z, and we're going to dispatch somebody to someplace, right? So what are the actions that we're going to take? And sometimes with clients, because I think executives have read a lot and leaders have read a lot of books that you've got to act fast, act fast, act fast, own it fast. And sometimes I'll tell our clients, we will do nothing. And that's really uncomfortable for them. And I'll say, we are not going to communicate anything now, because I don't know enough through our assessment to know what part of this we own, if any. And the big question is, what's our ownership in this? And so if you go out and communicate and you don't really have a lot of ownership and people aren't beating down your door and you're not really certain about it, the minute you communicate, you raise your profile on your hand. You also legitimize what's going on or the issue that you're facing. So that's the action. And we go through the whole action plan, and then we audit or monitor. We do a lot of monitoring of different channels. What are people saying on X? What are people saying on LinkedIn? What are people saying on Reddit? What are people saying on Google? I mean, what are we seeing? What are we seeing here? Is it big? Is it little? We just had a situation with one of our manufacturing clients, and they had a product that caught on fire at a facility, not in their home state. And so we assembled the team, and people are frantic because it's happening, 6 states away, and headquarters is over here. And and all of a sudden they're seeing, there's, choppers, they're being reported that, news choppers, right? And all this sort of stuff. We need to put out a statement. We need to say something. Who's going to do the interview? And I was like, wait, is the fire out? How big is the fire? Was it only with one product, or like, are you fully engulfed in your warehouse? And so I was like, we will do nothing. We will mobilize our team. We will be ready, but then I want to watch. And it was interesting after the noon news, and I think they only ran the story because they had video. After the noon news of a very small fire, there was no other coverage. Small fire, limited damage, no injuries. Work continues. So our communication was a simple holding statement that we would provide if media asked. But then our focus became really if any of our customers had that product, it caught on fire. So our communication focus then was directed more internally rather than externally. So you have to parse it out, right? You have to parse that out, and you have to be able to be patient to do that.
Such a smart approach, because the minute you step in front of a camera in a situation like that, like you said, you've owned it, you put your fingerprints on it, and you've made it a bigger story because now you're on the record giving quotes and giving the media more stuff to report. Therefore, they will automatically make it bigger because they have more to work with, right?
Yeah.
And that's almost
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not it rises to the level of news.
Right, because they figure you think it's important, you're talking about it, so I'm going to talk about it. And so I always tell my clients, I'm like, hey, listen, when you give media information, it's like oxygen to a flame. So let's think through and be real deliberate about what we're going to do and how we're going to do that. And sometimes some of these stickier kinds of crisis situations, right? So, like HR related crisis situations. I think that just most recently, there's three high profile CEOs who ended up stepping down. I think one went to a concert. He ended up stepping down. Another individual, with regard to a candy bar company, he ended up having to step down. And then a large grocery chain CEO, for many of the same reasons why the candy maker had to step down, he had to step down. And what I think is really important is in those HR sort of situations, when things are sticky like that, and we've done that when there's been allegations of bad behavior, you want to communicate internally, but you want to communicate in a way recognizing that your internal communication is going to grow some legs and walk external. And you've written it so that when it ends up on the front page of the New York Times, you're like, perfect, got it. But because it's usually involving behavior, right? Or sexual harassment or things that are still uncertain, right? That you can't really comment on. You put it on an internal communication, and then that internal communication usually finds its way external because people cannot help themselves but forward stuff.
Yeah, I frequently say there's no such thing as internal communications anymore. There's just internal that eventually becomes public.
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah. So now as we sort of you've spent decades doing this, right? And clearly you've guided your clients terrifically through lots of different types of situations. As we move now into this new era of communications, whether it's I call it citizen journalism or just people popping off on social media, sometimes that's a stickier wicket than the official call from the media, and it can be hard to contain. It can be hard to combat. And it's kind of like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time you bang one down, another one pops up. How do you counsel your clients to deal with crisis that takes on that type of an aspect, that social media citizen journalism aspect?
Well, it's really interesting and so timely that you bring this up because we deal with a lot of those sort of situations. And so we're working with a client, and it is it's I have to watch my words really carefully here. But the client has an employee, and clearly this employee is not in good favor with either his colleagues or those who report to him, because there's a lot on social media of his. what he does, what he doesn't do, his previous jobs. I mean, this guy's being targeted, okay, on social media, and then speeding tickets and just a variety of all these other different sorts of things. And so what happens is, like with this client, they're like, hey, people are on social media and they're kind of targeting this guy. And I said, you got two things here, right? You have to think about operationally, or from a business standpoint, right? Business decision making. You've got to look at whatever they're saying. And I have to tell you, it's been my experience that there's usually a kernel of truth, right? There's usually something there, right? It's usually something there. It may be exaggerated or it may not necessarily be exactly, but there's usually something there. So from a operational business decision, you've got some due diligence that you need to do. What are you really doing? Does this person really not have a degree? Was this person really fired? We had a situation where it happened to be a surgeon, and there were allegations that the surgeon had been sued multiple times and had put a hip in upside down and backwards. I said, somebody just doesn't bring that up. They say that their family sued him. Let's do some due diligence. So whenever it's on social media, I'm always interested in what's right? Okay. And then we communicate, but we don't interact on social media. The goal and objective is to get them off social media and say, clearly you have strong feelings about fill in the blank, and we would be happy to talk about your concerns offline. Please email me at whatever. And you try to get them off social media. But what I have found is that when people go through, there's usually a kernel of truth. And then the client, that person usually calls me, has to make a decision. They have to make a decision about this. Is what they've learned, has it risen to the occasion that they have to take some sort of action, bad behavior action or whatever? Or is it just what he does? This is what he does on his own time. He wore really inappropriate Halloween costumes. He has a swastika on his Facebook page. He says hateful comments. So you're seeing that on social media. And then I bring it and say, okay, based upon this, business owner, executive, right? Is this consistent with your values? And if it's not, then you have to take some sort of action. And that's what we communicate. But if you're okay with it, then we don't communicate. So.
Well, it can certainly be the wild, wild west out there. And Eileen, your clients are lucky to have you counseling them in the way that you are. Thank you so much for sharing your insight here on the show. Really appreciate you joining us. We are not done with you yet, however. We're going to take you now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. With your indulgence, Eileen Wixted, let's begin with rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
Oh, I really struggled with that because, as given my background, I look at all the different news sources, as you can imagine. But I would have to say CNN.
All right, we'll take it. Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform?
LinkedIn.
Love it. Rapid fire question number 3. Coffee or alcohol?
Diet Coke.
There it is. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on the run food?
Panera.
Oh, stopping in for the mac and cheese.
No, usually it's the pull through, drive through, the salads or something like that. But yeah, Panera.
Love it, love it. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Okay, so I laughed about that because I thought to myself, man, I will be feet first out of here. My 4 children talk about this company as my 5th and favorite child. So That's a really difficult question to answer. But, in addition to maybe writing a book or doing something like that, I think it would be great fun to be a substitute high school teacher. And I think it would be great fun because I think that that's such an important, impressionable age. And I think a little of the Brooklyn could go a long way here in the Midwest.
Love it. Eileen, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you and Wixted and Company online.
So they can find our company on our website, thinkwixted.com. And Wixted is Wixted. So thinkwixted.com. And my email is, feel free to email me. I will email you back. Wixted, Wixted at think, THINK, thinkwixted.com.
We love it. And thanks again, Eileen. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.